to your first day at secondary school when you're 11 years old. Or indeed, your first day at primary school when you're perhaps 7 years old. Take your minds back to those days, just if you can remember it. It's one of those memories that you rarely forget. I remember my first day at secondary school at Cecil Jones in Essex. It's a comprehensive that was since put under special measures. But I remember my first day there. And most of you will probably remember your first day either at primary or secondary school or both. And just take your minds back to how intimidating that first day can be when you're walking into that school. Your parents have sent you with your little lunchbox and you're worried as to whether people will like you. You're worried as to whether you'll make friends. You're worried as to whether the teachers are going to pick on you. You're worried as to whether your school uniform looks cool enough or is too tight or too baggy, whether your skirt is too long or too short, whether your trousers are too flary or too skinny, depending on the fashions of the day. You're worried whether your parents can afford the latest trainers for you, or whether people are going to laugh at your second-hand shoes that you're wearing. All of those fears that children have when they walk into school on a first day. Now put yourselves back in that mindset and imagine you're this 14-year-old who's been expelled from the school they've gone to since they were 11 and sent to a PRU by the local council, a pupil referral unit, and you know that everyone else who's been sent to this PRU is a hard knock, that they're also there because they've been making trouble. So you're going to walk into this school a bit like a juvenile detention centre, knowing that there will be other, perhaps, kids with trouble there, with trouble with aggression, and you're going to have to face them, and you know nobody, and it's your first day. That's how vulnerable, if you can take your mindset back to that, that's how vulnerable these kids are when they're sent to the PRUs. Just remember how you felt on your first day at school. So no wonder when the gangs, who remember this better than we do, are loitering outside these schools and are offering these kids protection, that's how they end up getting recruited to the gangs. So it's about time that the headmasters, not that their power has been curtailed, but that their power has now come with consequences and responsibility. What the government will recommend in this report is that when the headmasters make this decision to expel these pupils, they have to then play a role post-expulsion in the future education of this child. They have to take a responsibility as to where this child ends up getting placed for his or her education. They cannot simply wash their hands of this child once they've expelled the child from their own school. So the expulsion can still happen, but it comes with consequences. And it's there to act, this new recommendation is there to act as a sort of check to the power of headmasters, that yes, you can take the decision if you need to remove an unruly pupil from your school environment, but don't think that that means you are no longer responsible for the future welfare of this child. Once you accepted that child initially into your care in your school, you accepted a commitment that you cannot simply wash your hands of, and you have to work with the local councils to make sure that this child is continued to be cared for after the expulsion. And I think that's a rather sensible approach, because I do believe that what we had up until this government report's conclusions was what I can only describe as a racket. Unnecessary, perhaps, expulsions that were incentivised because the school wanted to make sure they remained high up in the league tables. Now, I can understand that desire to do so. However, in any society, we must be judged by how we treat our most vulnerable. And the vulnerable person in this equation isn't the headmaster. It isn't the school in terms of the bricks and mortar. It certainly isn't the school standing in league tables. The vulnerable person in this equation is the 14, 13 or 15-year-old child that has been expelled. And that's why we have, as people that would like to be judged by how we treat our most vulnerable, we have no option in this equation but to side with the vulnerable child, because none of us surely would dispute that once a 13 or 14-year-old child's been expelled from school, they are prey to these gangs who seek to recruit them and to a whole number of other factors. And potentially the rest of their lives could be affected by this decision that the headmasters made. If you don't get your GCSEs, imagine what your future chances of getting a job are.